Who are you and what the hell are you doing in my kitchen? That's what came flying out of my mouth when I showed up at my cabin 3 days early, only to find a complete stranger inside. Pots were bubbling on the stove, and clothes were scattered around my bedroom like she'd been living there for weeks. Then she looks at me and says, "Barbara from the HOA said it was fine. Quick question, where are you watching from? Drop it below. And while you're at it, imagine this happening to you." Furious doesn't even begin to describe it. What would you do if someone hit you with that line? Stick around because what happened next? Total madness. As someone who installs security systems for a living, I'm trained to spot the smallest signs that something's off. And today, something felt way off. The afternoon sun was blazing, yet the porch light was glowing like a lighthouse. I never leave it on, ever. Just a minor detail, but it screamed that something wasn't right. I slid my key into the lock and paused. It turned without resistance, too easily for a door that had supposedly been untouched for days. I stepped inside and stopped cold. The smell hit me first. Garlic and tomatoes, simmering like someone had just made themselves at home. Not just cooking settling in. I closed the door silently behind me, instincts kicking in. I wanted to sweep the house like I was back on a training op, but instead, I moved slowly, scanning everything. A purse on the table, a coffee mug with lipstick, shoes neatly by the door. It felt like someone else's life had taken over my space. My couch had a throw blanket I didn't own. A drying rack stood by the window. Women's clothes hanging in the breeze of the ceiling fan. Then I heard it humming, light and happy, like she was having the best day ever. My heart thudded in my chest. Did I walk into the wrong house? For a moment, I really wondered. Until I saw my family photo on the wall. No mistake, this was my home. I rounded the corner and there she was, a woman in her 50s, short brown hair, floral apron tied with care, as if she'd been living here for years. She spotted me and froze. Her wooden spoon hit the tile with a clatter. Her face drained of all color, like someone blew out a candle. "Oh my God," she gasped, backing into the counter. "You're not supposed to be here." I stared her down, voice steady but edged. "Can you explain what you're doing in my house?" Her hands clutched the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Silence hung between us, electric and tense. Then she stammered out an explanation, fast and shaky. "Barbara said you'd be gone 2 weeks. She told me it'd be safer to stay here than where I was before." Barbara, HOA president. That name dropped in my gut like a rock. I turned toward the wall where my security panel sat and my stomach twisted. It was dead, not disarmed, shut down. Someone had intentionally disabled it. And I'd know. I installed these systems. They don't just go offline. My jaw clenched. "Barbara let you in?" I asked, voice cold now. She nodded, hopeful. "Yes, she has a key. She said it's part of a community safety initiative." She even showed me how to turn off the alarm. My fists tightened at my sides. Barbara didn't just have access. She had my codes. And here I was, someone who preached security, getting blindsided by the very people I'd trusted. I swallowed hard, metal taste creeping up my throat. "Pack your things," I said flatly. "You're leaving now," she gasped. But instead of moving, she grabbed her phone with trembling fingers. "Barbara, he's back. Grant came home early. He's making me leave." Even across the room, I could hear Barbara's voice explode through the speaker. Loud, furious. The kind of angry that strips paint off walls. "Chloe," because that's when she finally told me her name. Looked at me, panicked. "She's on her way," she said. "She told me not to let you kick me out until she gets here." I let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Not let me. This is my house. You've got 5 minutes. While she stood there wringing her hands, I started walking through my home like a stranger in a crime scene. Drawers cracked open. A blanket I didn't recognize balled up on my couch. A toothbrush in my bathroom that wasn't mine. Violation. Chloe kept murmuring apologies behind me, saying I thought it was okay and Barbara said it was fine. But I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was already unraveling the setup. This wasn't random. This was a coordinated plan. My eyes landed on the drying rack again. Her clothes, swaying like flags marking stolen ground. This wasn't a two-night emergency. This was weeks in the making. Barbara had timed everything perfectly. My schedule, my departure, my security, everything. And underneath my anger, something colder took hold. Resolve. Barbara didn't just cross a line. She kicked off a war, And she picked the wrong opponent. A car door slammed outside, sharp and final. Heels clicked across the walkway fast, deliberate. Barbara had arrived. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of navy blue and her perfectly sprayed gray hair. My porch light glinted off her as she marched toward the door, the very light she probably turned on herself. The wooden steps groaned under her weight. Every footstep screamed authority, arrogance, control. I squared my shoulders as the door flew open. No knock, no pause. Barbara didn't walk in. She commanded the room. Even Chloe stepped back, clutching her phone like a shield. Barbara's eyes locked on me, sharp, focused, predatory. In that instant, I understood something bone deep. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated dominance. And she thought she had already won. I glanced at Chloe, still frozen in her sauce-stained apron. Then Barbara opened her mouth to launch the first strike, standing in the kitchen that no longer felt like mine. One thing was certain: whatever game she thought she was running, it ended tonight. If she believed she could turn my home into a rental empire, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. She hadn't entered. She invaded. Her suit was sharp, her tone sharper. Her heels hit the floor like gavels in a courtroom. She looked at me like I didn't belong. Grant, she said coldly. You returned early, without informing the HOA. No hello. No explanation, just cold reprimand. My jaw tightened. This is my house. I don't need permission to come home. She didn't blink. Instead, she whipped out a document, waving it like a judge's decree. Section 12.3. Homeowners away for more than 7 days must notify the HOA for security reasons. Her voice oozed smugness, like that clause gave her ownership over my property. I squinted at the fine print. Barbara, I said slowly, I bought this home. I didn't sign away my rights. She smiled, razor thin. Community living requires cooperation. You left it vulnerable. I made sure it was protected. She nodded toward Chloe like she was her proof of goodwill. Protected. I stepped closer, rage simmering beneath my skin. By moving someone into my home without my consent. Barbara's chin rose. Chloe needed a place. We help residents in crisis. She's not a resident, I snapped. And helping doesn't mean breaking into someone's house. The air turned tight like a pulled wire, 1 second from snapping. How did you get in? I asked. Barbara didn't flinch. The HOA keeps access for emergencies to my locks. My security system, standard policy, she replied smoothly. Emergency entry ensures safety. My pulse roared in my ears. You disabled my alarm. Her lips curled. We have master access. It's for your protection. That was the moment I saw through it all. This wasn't about safety. It was about control. She thought her title gave her the right to orchestrate people's lives. You crossed a line, I said. Barbara stepped forward, her perfume slicing through the air. I did what had to be done, she hissed. Chloe would have had nowhere to go. She's not my problem, I said, voice like steel. And this isn't charity. It's trespassing. Her eyes flashed, cold and sharp. You're overreacting. Overreacting, I laughed, bitter and raw. You bypassed my security, gave away my house. And now you're telling me I'm the problem. Her voice shifted, sweet poison. Grant, this attitude doesn't serve you. Homeowners who challenge the HOA usually find themselves living in misery. She let the words drift, slow and smoky. My back straightened. Was that a warning? It's the truth, she replied, smooth as silk. You want peace? Then follow the rules. Rules, her rules. Not law, not fairness. Just the kingdom she'd built from loopholes and footnotes. I could practically see the chess game in her head. Every resident at peace she maneuvered on a board only she understood. But I wasn't at peace, not then, not ever. Barbara, I said, my voice calm as a cocked trigger. Leave my house. Her expression froze, but her body didn't budge. For 3 thick seconds, we stood locked in a quiet standoff, separated by only 4 feet of tension. Then she turned to Chloe. Pack up, she instructed, coating venom with false compassion. Chloe hurried past, her phone clutched like a lifeline. Her eyes met mine, apology, fear, maybe shame flickering in them. Barbara paused in the doorway, her silhouette a shadow against the fading sun filtering through the glass. She leaned in close, voice frigid. Stand against me, and you'll regret it. Then she vanished. The door slammed with enough force to shake the windows, and a heavy silence swept through the house. I stood motionless, staring at the space she'd just filled, my heartbeat refusing to settle. Outside, her heels struck the walkway like defiance made audible. Her car door slammed shut, an exclamation point, and the engine screamed as she peeled away. But her threat didn't leave with her. It hung in the air, dense and dark, like thunder waiting to break. I turned toward the kitchen. Chloe's half-made spaghetti still steamed on the stove, the sauce thickened into something that looked more like blood than dinner. A flimsy apron draped over a chair, like a flag left behind in surrender. My refuge, my peaceful place, now felt invaded, violated by someone who didn't belong here. I grabbed the counter's edge until my knuckles went pale, channeling my fury into something sharper than anger, resolve. Barbara believed she could barge into my world like royalty issuing decrees. She counted on fear to keep me compliant. She had no clue who she was dealing with. To decades I've spent securing properties, identifying flaws, sealing every gap. And now, she'd shown me hers. By the time I lowered myself into the kitchen chair, what I felt wasn't rage, it was focus. I opened my laptop, hands poised above the keys, and began assembling an evidence file, timestamps, security logs, Chloe's admission about Barbara. Each note like a bullet in a list. If Barbara wanted a war, this was her declaration. And I don't lose wars. As the evening deepened, the wind stirred the trees outside like distant applause. I looked out the window, met the reflection of my own eyes, harder now, colder. She craved power, obedience. But what she'd get was the truth dragged into the light, kicking and screaming. And this was just the opening move. The next morning, I woke to the sound of tape being ripped. At first, I thought a bird was scratching at the screen door. But no, when I opened the front door, an envelope greeted me, shouting in bold red, "Official HOA violation notice. Gras total." Apparently, my lawn had dared to exceed the sacred height of 2.5 inches. I laughed aloud. 2.5 inches, seriously. I'd trimmed it 4 days ago, and it looked clean enough for a PGA tour. Whatever. I peeled it off, tossed it on the counter like brushing off a mosquito bite. But that was only the first punch. Each morning after brought a fresh notice. Too much grass. Unauthorized cameras. My truck a threat to the neighborhood's aesthetic. The irony burned. The same cameras Barbara hacked were now labeled illegal. She didn't even try to make the lies creative. Every letter oozed that signature HOA, tone like commandments etched in stone. And the fines piled high. $150 for the grass, $300 for the cameras, $200 for parking improperly. I recorded everything. Measurements, timestamps, photographs, stacked high with proof. If Barbara thought she could bully me into backing down, she hadn't done her homework. By the third day, her passive-aggressive campaign became all-out warfare. Her final salvo landed on Friday. Mandatory disciplinary hearing. Failure to pay $650 in fines could lead to legal action and even suspension of residency. Translation. She wanted me gone. The language was smug. Failure to comply may result in the loss of community privileges. Community privileges. This was my home, my land, my rights, and Barbara dangled them like bait on a hook. I stared at the notice for a full minute. Not out of fear, but with that calm you feel right before a storm hits. I didn't retreat. I started planning. First step. Paper trail. Under the blue glow of my laptop, I drafted formal replies to every so-called violation. Precise, surgical, photos, logs, measurements, each falsehood dissected and pinned down like a specimen. Then I compiled everything into a formal complaint, an authorized entry. Tampering with security, illegal occupation, retaliatory citations. I didn't stop there. I CC'd every board member. Each message squeaky clean, but packed with legal weight. If Barbara wanted a showdown, she'd just entered my arena. And I don't play by her rules. While the printer spit out documents, I cracked open the HOA bylaws. Read them line by line, like decoding enemy transmissions. Those emergency access powers Barbara loved to flaunt. Total fiction. The rules. Covered landscaping in shared areas, snow clearing schedules, parking policies. Not one word about entering private homes without permission and disabling a security system. That wasn't just overreach, it was borderline criminal trespass. The more I read, the clearer it became. Barbara wasn't enforcing rules. She was inventing them and ruling from behind a fake crown. Saturday morning, I became the messenger of truth. I hand-delivered sealed packets to every board member. Each envelope weighed down with evidence. Derek, the vice president, answered the door in a faded Broncos tee. His brow wrinkled with confusion. "Morning," I said coolly. "You'll want to read this." He opened it, brows tightening with each page. "What is all this?" "Proof," I answered. "Barbara's breaking laws while pretending to uphold them." His head snapped up. "What do you mean, laws?" "Start with page 3, I told him. "It only gets better." By the time I got to Robert, the treasurer, my pulse had settled into calm satisfaction. His expression, as he skimmed, was everything I'd hoped for. "Unauthorized rentals," he muttered. "You're saying she's letting people stay?" "Not saying," I replied, showing names, dates, payment records. He stared at me like he'd just felt the floor crack. This needs to be brought to the board." "Exactly why I'm here," I said. "Call an emergency meeting and check the books. If she's been pocketing payments, you'll find holes big enough to park a truck through." I was nearly back to my driveway when my phone buzzed. A known number. I answered, voice steady. "Hello." Silence. Then a hiss. "You're making a big mistake. Some battles aren't worth it. Drop this while you still can." Her words crawled down the line like oil, cold and slick. I didn't need caller ID. I recognized the voice. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because threats reveal fear. Barbara was rattled, and that meant leverage. I saved the voicemail, exported it, and dropped it into my ever-growing file. If she wanted war, she'd get it, with receipts and signatures. That night, my kitchen transformed into a command center. Papers spread like blueprints. Coffee steamed beside a voice recorder repeating Barbara's veiled threat. And I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. If she could enter my house, disable my system, install someone like a squatter, how many others had she violated? How many just paid up because they thought fighting was hopeless? I imagined them. Good people, bullied into silence by a woman hiding behind an HOA logo. Not anymore. Not while I stood. I wasn't just protecting my home, I was dismantling her regime, brick by brick. That night, I typed one final letter. Not to Barbara, to the board. Request for emergency meeting to discuss abuse of power, possible financial misconduct, and targeted harassment by HOA. Leadership. Professional, polite, lethal. I hit print. Leaning back, adrenaline humming in my chest. Barbara thought she could drown me in fake fines and legal theater. She forgot one thing. I designed systems to withstand intrusion. Now I was the intrusion, and I wasn't leaving. By the time I shut off the light, one thought echoed louder than the rest. Barbara had just declared war, and I don't lose wars. My eyes scanned desperately for a single phrase that might justify what she'd done, but there was nothing. No disclaimer, no hidden clause, not even a loophole that gave her the authority to barge into private homes or deactivate alarm systems. Her entire empire was built on smoke and intimidation. I called Secure Home Solutions just to be sure. "Does the HOA have any sort of override access?" I asked. The tech laughed so hard, I heard his chair creak. "Only if you gave them your codes, or a court orders it." That's it. The truth hit like a sledgehammer. She had lied to every single neighbor. She had zero legal standing. Every time she used that key, every time she silenced an alarm, she was committing trespass. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs. This wasn't a neighborhood spat anymore. It was criminal. And I was holding the matchbook that could set her empire ablaze. Midnight came and went, but I wasn't tired, just electric. Chloe's messages, her payments, Barbara's voicemail threat, Mrs. Henderson's stained confession note, they stacked on my laptop screen like bricks in a wall. I grouped everything, labeled, sorted, built a timeline sharp enough to cut glass. My computer glowed hot in the dark as I dropped audio files into a folder marked exhibits. Each ding from a saved file sounded like a round being chambered. Then my phone buzzed, slicing through the quiet. A known number. I picked up. Her voice slid through the line like venom. "Grant, stop this. Now," she whispered. "You think you're winning, but you're about to burn down more than you understand." Then a click. Silence. My gut twisted. I stared at the dead screen, jaw tight, anger simmering beneath something sharper, clarity. She was afraid. And that meant I had leverage. I saved the voicemail. Exhibit 12. No grand speeches, no moral debates, just action. I wrote a formal request demanding full disclosure of HOA financial records for the past 2 years, citing state law that gave them 10 business days to comply. CC'd the entire board. I attached a summary of my findings, just enough to make them sweat without giving away my full play. When I hit send, it felt like pulling a trigger. By morning, the sky was a bruised purple. I was back in the truck, envelopes stuffed so thick they could jam a shredder. Every board member got a copy, names, dates, screenshots, the raw truth. No sugarcoating. Derek, the vice president, opened his door in a faded Broncos shirt, eyes blinking like he'd walked into a murder scene. Morning, I said flatly, handing him the packet. You need to see this. He flipped to the first page, brow furrowing like barbed wire. Grant, this is proof Barbara's not enforcing rules. She's breaking them and cashing in while she does it. By the time I reached the treasurer's mailbox, my phone buzzed again. Derek, we need an emergency meeting, he said. Barbara's blowing up my phone. Good. That meant the missile had hit its mark. I gripped the wheel tighter, the road humming beneath me. One thought thrummed in my mind in rhythm with the engine. She craved control. Now she was about to lose it all. Because I wasn't just coming for her position, I was tearing down the entire corrupt scaffolding around it. And when it crumbled, there wouldn't be a throne left for her to crawl back to. When I cut the engine and stepped into my house, my phone lit up again. 5 words. You should have stayed silent. I looked out toward the tree line beyond my porch. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a figure melting into the shadows. My gut clenched. Barbara wasn't playing HOA president anymore. She was going to war. And I was ready. The HOA clubhouse that night felt more like a courtroom with a cheap makeover. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting off polished tile, casting every face in a nervous pallor. Folding chairs lined up in military rows, neighbors perched on the edge of them, waiting for blood. This wasn't a routine meeting. The room smelled like panic and stale coffee. Tonight was judgment. And Barbara knew it. My pulse throbbed in my throat as I clutched the folder in my lap. Photos, statements, evidence enough to dismantle a reputation that had waltzed around here like royalty. Barbara strolled in 5 minutes late, a calculated entrance that screamed, "This is still my show." Her blazer looked designer, but fit more like battle armor. Her clenched jaw told a story her lips would never admit. Trailing behind her was a man in a crumpled gray suit, looking like he'd lost a war with fashion and ethics. Barbara introduced him as her legal counsel, her voice soaked in sugary confidence. But anyone with a pulse could see he was no courtroom professional. He looked more like someone who installs garage doors. The whisper started. Even the buzzing lights seemed to hum louder. Barbara didn't waste time. She launched into her performance. Words like community trust, shared values, and protecting property flowed like gospel. Her voice sweet as honey. Her eyes, pure blade. She painted herself as the guardian of Pine Ridge, while villains like me threatened to unravel her order. I let her go on. The more she talked, the more rope she wrapped around her own neck. When she finally paused, the chairperson gave me a nod. I rose slowly, calm, carrying my folder like it held a loaded weapon. I spread the documents on the table, photos, bank transfers, text screenshots, lining them up like dominoes ready to fall. My voice was level as steel. Who authorized entry into private homes without the owner's permission? I asked. Silence. The kind that shouts louder than words. Barbara's jaw flexed, her knuckles bone white on the table. Before she could spin a lie, a chair scraped against the floor. Chloe stood, cheeks flushed, her voice quivering but clear. Barbara made me pay her $300 a week to stay in Grant's house. The room froze. Head snapped toward her like a domino chain falling. Gasps erupted, whispers igniting like fire. Barbara hissed, "You little liar," but Chloe stood firm. Tears at the corners of her eyes, but her chin didn't drop. I slid a paper across the table like an ace card. 2 months of bank transfers, I said, my tone cold. All to Barbara's personal account. The crowd cracked. Shock, rage, disbelief. It all boiled over. Derek finally spoke, his voice sounding like it didn't belong to him. "Barbara, this doesn't look good." That was the spark. Barbara snapped. Her words exploded with bitterness and fury. She screamed about sacrifices, about how no one appreciated her efforts, about being the glue that held this place together. She slammed her fist on the table. A water pitcher toppled, spilling like blood on polished wood. Neighbors recoiled, Her voice had turned raw, animalistic, but desperation doesn't smell like power. It reeks of collapse. I let the silence that followed her breakdown settle like ash before I stepped in, voice quiet, cold. "If you're done," I said, then turned toward her so-called lawyer. "State your bar number." His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I'm not a lawyer," he admitted. "I'm her brother-in-law." The room erupted half-gasp, half-disbelieving laughter. People exchanged glances that screamed, "Is this really happening?" Barbara flushed deep red, veins standing out like cracks in a porcelain mask. She tried to speak, but the words choked. On her fury, her crown had cracked, and everyone saw the pieces hit the floor. Derek slammed the gavel. "Enough," he snapped. His gaze swept the board like a judge delivering justice. "We vote now. Motion to suspend Barbara effective immediately." One by one, hands rose. Lisa's trembled, but it rose. The treasurer's jaw was tight, but his hand followed. Derek raised the last. 3-1. Motion passed. It took less than 30 seconds. But the weight of it stretched like an eternity. Barbara stood hollow-eyed, gripping her folder like it might hold her life together. She spun on her heel, knocking over a chair that clattered like a gun hitting tile. Her brother-in-law scurried after her, tripping on whatever pride he had left at the door. She paused just long enough to fling her last venom. "This isn't over." Not by a long shot. The door slammed like a shotgun blast. Blinds rattled. And for a moment, silence owned the room, the shuffle of feet and fear whispering up the walls. Because everyone now knew what I'd known for weeks. Barbara didn't take defeat. She took revenge. I slid each document back into my folder with the focus of a surgeon. My hands were steady, but my chest burned with the knowledge this wasn't a victory lap. Outside, the night felt like an ambush. Still, too quiet. The air bit at my skin as I walked to the truck, the crunch of gravel louder than it should have been. I dropped the folder onto the seat. The engine roared to life, headlights slicing into the dark. I exhaled for the first time in hours. Then came the buzz. A text. 5 words. No name. Just, "You should have stayed silent." My heart jumped. My gut coiled. I scanned the parking lot, empty except for the clubhouse door swinging, slow and aimless like something out of a dream you want to wake from. Then movement. A shadow peeled away from the night, stretching across the pavement, thin and long like a reach that didn't plan on letting go. I shifted into drive, eyes locked on that shadow. The text blazing in my mind like fire. Barbara had thrown out the rulebook, and I was done waiting to see what she'd do next. The officers pivoted as one. Barbara's face went nuclear. "You filthy liar," she lunged, but the taller cop blocked her mid-swing, grabbing her wrist with unflinching control. "That's enough," he said, voice firm and final like a steel door slamming shut. Barbara fought against the grip, shrieking about betrayal, screaming about loyalty. My heartbeat thundered in my ears while relief began to settle in my bones. Weeks of torment compressed into this one instant, a truth bomb exploding right in the center of her little empire. But Barbara wasn't finished gasping for power. "You idiots," she howled, snatching at the binder. Pages tore loose, scattering across the table like wounded birds. "He's setting me up," she shrieked, neck veins straining like rope. "I built this neighborhood. I saved it from people like him." Her voice fractured under the strain of fury and madness. The shorter officer calmly held down the last page beneath his palm, expression unreadable. The taller one twisted her arm behind her back with surgical precision, the cold snap of handcuffs slicing through her spiral. "Barbara Sanderson," he announced, "you're under arrest for fraud, unlawful entry, and submitting a false police report." The words struck harder than a judge's gavel. Barbara froze, just for a breath, then erupted. "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, thrashing like a wildcat caught in a trap. "I'm the victim." But the cuffs told a different story. The officers led her out the door as neighbors' phones lit up, flashes popping like fireworks. Gasps, murmurs, and the buzzing of recording apps filled the air like static. Every snap caught the fall of her. "Rain." She kept shouting names, hurling threats, vowing revenge, right up until the patrol car swallowed her whole and slammed its door like a punctuation mark, ending the chaos. Red and blue lights pulsed down the street, carrying her into a night she couldn't twist to her will. The taller cop turned back toward me. His face softened, just slightly, a flicker of humanity beneath the badge. "You played this smart," he said low enough for only me to hear. Could have gone sideways real fast. I nodded, jaw clenched, gratitude caught in my throat. I was just glad I held it together. He closed his notebook with a soft thump. We'll need your full statement tomorrow. Expect a call. And then they were gone. Engines murmured into the distance, leaving only the soft ghost of tire marks on the road. I stood still, breath deep and slow, staring at the now empty street. Every muscle twitched like a too-tight wire. Inside, my house, breathed with me. The binder lay shredded on the table, but that no longer mattered. The truth was out. The queen had toppled, yet unease still crawled under my skin. People like Barbara don't disappear. They hide. They scheme. I looked around at the wreckage of my once peaceful life, then up at the glowing security panel on the wall. For the first time in weeks, this place felt like mine again. But as the final wail of sirens faded into the night, one thought anchored itself in my mind. This isn't over. Not yet. 3 weeks after Barbara's arrest, the neighborhood felt freshly scrubbed. No more red notices taped to doors. No gossip slithering through the hedges. Just a stillness so thick it had texture. But tranquility wasn't the only thing spreading. Barbara's downfall had gone viral. The police report read like a crime drama to 14 homes entered without permission. Over $23,000 rerouted to her personal bank, and a paper trail stretching back to years. When the story broke, it didn't stay local. It erupted online like an unexpected fireworks show. There it was, blowing up on Reddit in a thread titled "When HOAs Go Rogue." Her mugshot sat beneath the caption, "Neighborhood Queen Dethroned." The comments. Brutal. Best raid I've seen all year. She turned the HOA into Airbnb without asking. One post showed her with a tiny crown photoshopped on her head and vacancy available flashing in neon above it. Twitter picked it up next. Hashtags like #ByeByeBarbara and #HOA Hell started trending. Justice had become a meme, and honestly, watching her kingdom crumble in high definition was the most satisfying cup of coffee I'd ever sipped. Court day came quick. I made sure I was there. Barbara climbed those courthouse steps in a navy suit that looked like it had barely survived a war. Her hair hung limp. Makeup traced every sleepless night on her face. Cameras surged forward. Microphones jabbed like bayonets. And through it all, she tried to smile. A forced, brittle smile that snapped the moment a reporter asked, "Barbara, did you really rent out your neighbors' homes?" Her jaw twitched. That was all it took. Inside the courtroom, her mask shattered. She entered strong, the chin up, flinging accusations of slander and calling it a witch hunt. But the judge wasn't buying tickets to her show. When he listed the charges, fraud, trespassing, and filing false reports, her voice trembled. "I was protecting this community," she cried, mascara trailing down her cheeks like war paint in the rain. Then the gavel hit, loud and final. Restitution, full penalties, jail time. Boom. Just like that, the queen of the cul-de-sac had no keys, no throne, and no castle. When deputies cuffed her, the sound cracked like a drumbeat in my chest. That metallic snap wasn't just noise. It was closure. Outside, phones flashed again, a second fireworks display as they loaded her into the cruiser, still screaming about betrayal. I stood among the crowd, not gloating, just breathing. Deep, measured. Like a man stepping out of a storm cellar after the tornado passed. I half expected her to spot me, to hurl one last threat. She didn't. She just kept yelling into a void that no one wanted to fill anymore. The HOA didn't waste a second picking up the rubble. Emergency. Elections were held within days. The new board came out swinging, fast and sharp. Locks were changed. Her backdoor access policies were shredded. Bylaws were rewritten so tight you could bounce a quarter off them. Every financial document made public. No more secret accounts. No more fear-fed piggy banks. And one new rule got a standing ovation. No master keys. No exceptions. The message wasn't subtle. The very tool Barbara used to dominate, now buried. This street had learned the hard way. Neighbors emerged with stories that made my stomach twist. One man admitted he paid her in cash to dodge violations she invented. A woman said Barbara snuck into her backyard, then billed her for a landscaping upgrade. Another found a tracking device under his car, likely Barbara's way of busting late-night parking. Each confession dug the hole deeper. This wasn't community care. It was greed, dressed up in pastel newsletters and plastic smiles. And for 2 years, fear kept everyone silent. But now I had peace. Real peace. No more pounding knocks. No more fake citations. Just mornings on the porch, coffee steaming in the cold, and the lake glimmering like glass through the trees. I fixed what she'd broken, patched the doorframe, rearmed the security, even planted new flowers. Funny how the simplest things feel like luxuries after months of war in your own home. For the first time since it all began, I wasn't glancing over my shoulder. Then one night, while cleaning out a cabinet, I found something that stopped me cold. Barbara's master key. I'd picked it up from the grass the morning after her arrest and dropped it in a jar, then forgot. I held it under the lamp, its teeth gleaming like a predator's grin. This tiny scrap of metal had been her crown, her sword, her scripture. Now, just a dead artifact in my hand. I sealed it in that mason jar and tucked it next to my copy of the HOA bylaws. Let it stay there, forever. A reminder, borrowed power burns the Borua. Then, the internet delivered the encore Barbara never wanted. A neighbor posted a slow-mo video of her arrest, set to dramatic music. TikTok grabbed it first, then it spread like wildfire. Captions blared. HOA Queen dethroned, caught in 4,000. Someone even turned her tantrum into a dance meme. Another photoshopped her mugshot onto the orange is the new black poster. My favorite. A photo of the master key wearing a little crown with the words, "Long live the Queen." Oh wait. I laughed so hard I spilled coffee across the counter. For once, karma wasn't quiet. It was trending. Sometimes, I think back to the day I first unlocked my front door and felt like a trespasser. Barbara didn't just bend the rules, she tried to break peace itself, and failed. Victory didn't feel like fanfare or speeches. It sounded like my porch swing creaking again, smelled like garlic from my kitchen, because I was the one cooking, and it looked like a lock clicking shut. Mine, not hers. That's what winning is, reclaiming what was yours all along. Even the neighborhood changed. You could feel it. Kids riding bikes without someone snapping photos for violations. Neighbors waved now instead of squinting from behind shrubs. Weekend barbecues replaced secret board meetings and whispered threats. Even the air felt lighter, like the whole block exhaled together. We didn't just rewrite rules, we erased fear. Last night, the moon lit up the lake in silver. I sat on my porch, eyes resting on that mason jar. Just glass and metal, that's all. But to me, it's a monument. Proof that crowns crack, keys rust, and tyrants fall. Barbara thought she ruled this place. Now her throne's a bunk bed behind bars, and here I sit, looking out over that quiet lake, wind teasing ripples across the water, and I can't help but chuckle. A few months ago, all I wanted was a peaceful life. Instead, I went to war with a woman who thought a title gave her dominion over us all. And the one thing I learned, never underestimate how far a control freak will go when they think no one's watching. Paperwork, power trips, phony smiles, they're weapons. But guess what wins? Receipts, cameras, and a spine. Anyway, what about you? If this had happened to you, would you have blown up like I did, or packed your bags and left? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to know. And hey, if you enjoyed hanging out in this chaos with me, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe for more HOA nightmares. And if you feel like tipping me a coffee for surviving this circus, that thanks button's right below. No pressure, but it keeps these stories going. Alright, I'm out. See you next time, and fingers crossed, no more cops on my porch at midnight.